Welcome back to another edition of Richie on the Rocks. Today I'm seated with my good friend, Miss Riley Knoxx. She's a talk show host, she's a businesswoman, she's an entrepreneur, she's an entertainer, singer, actor, and trans activist.
That's a long list.
I know, right? Welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up?
So recently we've seen a lot in the news about Caitlyn Jenner. Dun 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 dun. So let's just jump right in. What are your thoughts about this whole matter? I want to know what you're thinking.
I'm really happy. I'm extremely happy for her. I'm happy for my community. I'm happy that the world finally, watching. If you watched the show or you felt like you knew who Bruce Jenner was, then you kind of feel like now I know someone who's trans. You can't say I don't know what that is anymore. It's on the cover of Vanity Fair. It's been on the cover of Time magazine. We've been everywhere, and we've always been here. We've always walked amongst you. but the thing is, it's in the forefront, and
Okay.
I'm really happy for her, and she looks absolutely beautiful. And everybody was shocked at the transformation. I was too. I was, a lot of people just weren't
I don't really
expecting
feel like I
her.
was that shocked at the transformation. I feel
Well,
like
I think people were expecting her to
when I-
look
every
more
time I
manly.
see every time I saw him at the time, in the tabloids or on television,
Looked
I
more and
already
more
felt
like a
he was
woman.
looking more and
Yeah.
more like a woman anyway.
Yeah.
So when the whole thing finally appeared, I said, "Oh, she's wearing makeup now." That was it.
I noticed the jawline and the
Yeah,
breast
I mean, you
and all
can kind
that.
of see
Yeah.
because I know you've done a couple of television appearances and that sort of thing. What has it been like? Talk to us about that.
It's been a lot of people have been asking my opinion. What do I think? What do I think of her, or how do I feel?
Yeah.
And it's been a lot. It's been a lot, but I welcome it because I'd rather people ask and rather than assume. A lot of people feel like they want to ask me questions because they want to understand it more. Even people who I've been friends with for a long time, or people that don't really know me that well, but they want to know just because it's sort of like it's in the news right now. So
It's funny because it's something that I feel like we talk about on every show that we're on together.
Yeah.
But I feel like it has never been something that I really cared that much about personally.
yeah, I don't know that you and
As
I
a
have
friend,
ever
like, I've
talked
never
about it in
really,
our
like,
friendship though. Like we've
I've
talked about.
never had
yeah.
any real questions, but we're gonna ask those questions today.
Okay.
So what have been some of the crazy questions that you've been asked? Has there been anything that stuck out in your mind as like, okay, this is completely ridiculous?
In general, I just think it's always, and I talked about this on another show this week. I think it's always funny to me when people want to ask, what's between your legs, like whether you've had the surgery. I just think I would never just walk up to some random person and ask them that question. And I always wonder myself, what is that going to do for your life? Because you're not planning on sleeping with me, so why would you care?
How do you answer the question?
Just like I just did.
Really?
yeah. It's fans ask me all the time. Like I'll have somebody that will take a picture with me, and they're like, "You're so beautiful," and they always lead with that because they think that's going to like soften
Right,
the,
right.
You're so beautiful. Are you a complete woman yet? And I'm just like, why?
What
That's
does
not
that
your. I was like,
mean?
baby, that's none of your business. I'll say it in a sweet way, but yeah. I've had people ask me all kinds of questions. I've had people ask me, so at the time when I had a boyfriend, they're like, "You have a boyfriend? Does that make him? Is he gay or is he straight or is he what does he identify with?" I said, "Well, he's right there. Why don't you ask him?" It's
And
not.
I've
yeah.
met quite a few of your boyfriends.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
So, question: do you feel an obligation to be a spokesperson for the transgender community? Like, do you feel like, because now it's like, okay, this whole publication comes out where Caitlyn is featured, and it's like all of a sudden, you're back in the news
Yeah.
doing this again. So,
I
do you
think
feel like you have to do it? Like,
no. I think spokesperson is a choice. Role model is not.
okay. Talk about the difference for you.
Well, there are girls who look up to me and that come up to me after my shows, or that send me messages on Facebook and Instagram that say that they look up to me, or thank you for what you do, or they want advice, or just want to share their story, or thank you for sharing your story. They'll say that to me, and that is, I didn't really choose to be a role model. It's sort of like, I think that's great. I didn't set out to be a role model. I'm just living my truth.
Right.
But as far as like spokesperson, I think I kind of been unofficially thrust into it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've said yes to the gigs, you know, I've said yes to going on the shows. And so it's just kind of, I don't mind either one. I really don't.
Okay.
Because like I said, I'd much rather people have the information and people know the truth
Right.
about a lot of things instead of just assuming.
Did you have any role models before your transition? Did you have anyone that you kind of looked up to, or did you need that? Was it?
No,
What was that
and
like?
no, and it was really hard. Growing up as a kid, it was extremely lonely and hard because I had no one to talk to about
Right.
it. I had no one to. I couldn't tell anyone. I felt completely alone. I didn't know anyone that was like me. I knew I was different. I didn't even know the correct word for it. I didn't know. I knew what my parents called it, which was the incorrect word. But I was scared. I was confused. And it wasn't until I moved here to DC and I started hanging around people in like the drag community, and I met some other transsexuals, and I was just like, they're like me, you know?
Right.
And I started like talking to them. So it wasn't anybody that was on TV or while I was growing up. My role models came in the sense of the girls that fought in the streets so that I could walk down the street.
Right.
You know, the girls that were around long before I was. When I was 19 years old and performing in clubs that I wasn't even old enough to get into, those girls were like in their 40s and they had, you know, lived some hard lives. And those were the girls that I really like admired and looked up to because they were themselves against all odds. They didn't care what anybody thought about them. They just walked down the street and just lived their truth. And those are the girls that I really looked up to and thought of as role models.
Okay. So can you walk us through like your history in terms of like how you got to the point from where you were before you moved here to now?
I can remember back as far as the youngest I remember is 5 years old. I always say there's two things I know for sure: that I was born to be an entertainer and that I was going to become a woman. One of the things that stands out in my mind, I think it stands out in all my cousins and my sisters' minds, is I used to run around with a flashlight, pretending it was a microphone, with a pillowcase on my head, singing Whitney Houston songs.
Okay.
And my cousins all thought of me as like the girl cousin. I always would, I would play with my sister's Barbie dolls.
Really?
I would play with my sister's Barbie dolls, and I wanted them. I think that's why I collect Barbies now. But I would sneak and play with them.
Yeah.
And if I heard footsteps, like my mother or my father coming, I would put it down really fast and pick up my cars.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a lot of people, if they would bring me presents or bring me toys, I got every single Matchbox car and every single fire truck and baseball bat and basketball and football. It was insane. It was just like they just tried to flood me with all these boy toys. I wasn't allowed to have anything that was even close to a doll. I wasn't even allowed to have G.I. Joe or My Buddy.
Really?
You know, no, I couldn't have any
Life
of that.
without G.I. Joe?
No, I wasn't allowed. And I think that's because they knew exactly what I was, or they knew how I was, and they tried to suppress it so much. And they would say things to me like, "Stop sitting like that. Stop playing with your sister's hair. Stop talking like that. Boys don't do that. You're a boy. You're a boy. You're a boy. You're a boy. A boy. A boy." And I would hear that constantly, and I could they would constantly say that to me, and I'm just like, I just want to sit still, just sit on my hands. I can't do anything. Everything,
Yeah.
mannerism, everything. And so as a kid, I didn't play with a lot of kids. I wasn't around a lot of kids. I didn't want to, you know, because if I was around another kid and they saw that I was different, they would just like, "Oh, you're a fag," or you're acting like a girl, or
Right.
you're, you know, all this stuff. And it was just kind of weird. It was hurtful. So, that was, you know, when I was much younger. And then as a teenager, I just would stay up in my room, and I was very artistic, so I would paint and I would draw, and I would always draw women, and I would always draw famous women and just clothes and all this stuff. I used to take yarn, like really long things of yarn, and I would make wigs out of this yarn and hide it under my bed.
You
And
had a lot of time.
I did, because I didn't play with other kids.
Really?
And
Why was that?
Because I was,
You thought they would know.
yeah, and it was just lonely. I didn't
Yeah.
feel like there was anybody that I was like.
Gotcha.
I didn't want to play with the boys; they were too rough. I didn't want to get dirty. And and you know, with the girls, it was just kind of, even in high school, I hung out with all girls. But it was funny in high school because, you know, it's funny. No one in my high school or anybody in my graduating class, when I went back from my 10-year reunion, no one thought that this was out of the ordinary. They were just, it seemed like they were already used to it. I walked into the reunion and I was late. I was like the last person to get there, and they all applauded. They all stood up and applauded, and I still remember. Yeah, I remember that. And they all came up to me and they were like, "Do you remember me?" And I was like, "You're my best friend in high school. Of course I remember you. I'm still the same person inside of here, you know."
Yeah.
They were even afraid because they had taken these pictures from the yearbook, and they had posted them all on this wall in the place where we had the reunion. And there's a picture of me in high school sitting out in the hallway, and they were like, "We don't want to offend her. Like, should we put it up?" And I was like, "No," because it's still a part of my life.
Right.
But no one that I went to high school with thought that this was out of the ordinary. My last 2 years of high school, I hung out with the girls, and all the guys kind of treated me like one of the girls. They held the doors open for me. They were really like nice and sweet to me. So it's just kind of,
Really?
yeah. And I remember.
You think that's because, I mean, you grew up in California, right?
Yeah, but I finished high school in South Carolina.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So because I went to live with my grandmother.
Gotcha.
And so it was just it's kind of a funny thing because I went through a period where I didn't really look like a boy, but I didn't really look like a girl either. And I had not started transitioning. I was still a teenager. So people would come up to me and they say, "Are you a boy or a girl?" And it was the most irritating thing ever. They just thought I was like a short curly haired girl or something. I was always really small. So
what is the process like to transition? Because I'm wondering, like, is it difficult, or was it easy to embrace a new body?
Is it easy to embrace a new body?
Because it's somewhat new, right?
It's been 10 years for me now.
There are things that are different.
That's true. It's
Right.
been 10 years for me now. But when I first started, I first moved. I ran away from home, and I moved here when I was 19 years old. And so I didn't start my transition immediately when I came here. I started performing, but I didn't start my transition until I was 24 years old.
Okay.
So it's been 10 years now. And I just remember my first hormone shot. I remember my chest being really sore for a few days. And then I started to develop, and it was just it happened quick.
Right.
But it was I don't know, because I started dressing before I started to really develop, or until
Gotcha.
I started to get curvier. Yeah. So I started to dress as a girl. Before that, I just would like pad my bra or like stuff it or whatever. Yeah. And it wasn't that the feeling of being in a new body. It was the reaction of people.
Has it been difficult to date?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
What's the hardest part?
It's been.
I know already because
Yeah.
conversations that we've had, but like for people who don't know, what's kind of been the hardest part for you? Because not only,
Well, it's easy. I've never had the problem getting attention of a man.
right.
Never. I attract the kind of men that I like, and the kind of men that I would like to be with, but only a percentage of them are okay with what I used to be, and it's not usually anything to do with me physically or with me internally. It's really a lot of them have had issues with what their friends or their family was going to think, where they're going to be viewed as gay, whether just how everybody was going to think of them, or if they were walking down the street with me and someone figured it out or knew who I was. Now, see, the thing is, it's one thing to date someone who is transgender and have to deal with everything that comes with that. But it's another thing to date someone who's transgender and well known. That's another thing. Like, you can Google me, and the first thing that comes up is that I'm transgender. It's an interview I did a few years back talking about relationships and being transgender. And so it's not like anything that I could hide, nor that I want to at this point in my life.
Right.
But it's one of those things that if, say, you and I were dating and you took me to meet your parents and, they wanted to know more about me or they had a suspicion, they can Google it and find out.
Right.
Yeah. And then it's also another thing that, as much as I would like to be a little more obscure sometimes and just kind of fit in when I'm in public, it doesn't usually happen. Someone will say, "Oh my God, aren't you the one that does Beyonce?" Or "Aren't you, Riley Knoxx?" Or all that. And so to deal with that and also have to deal with the fact that you're dating someone that you just fell in love with and you didn't really fall in love with the fact that she was trans, that's a lot. And I don't know what that's like, but I understand it because I've been through it enough times. I've been dating since I was, since I first started out with my transition.
So let's go back really quickly to this whole Caitlyn Jenner thing.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about people saying that, she's just doing this to get the same level of attention as the rest of the Kardashians? How do you respond to something
I've had
like
to defend that a lot.
I know, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah. I don't think you go through what we go through. And I haven't had it really hard, but I haven't had it easy either. And I don't think you go through what we go through, the ridicule, the struggle with yourself inside. I don't think you go through what we go through for that reason. I think, because she is a public figure and because her life is so public and was so public even before the transition, it was one of those things where you couldn't really hide it. She had to do it publicly. I think the wonderful thing about it is, and from what I've heard her say, I think she'll do a lot of good. Just based on the fact that she has everybody's attention. And if you remember that when she was Bruce, she used to do a lot of motivational speaking. So I think I've heard her talk about it, she's going to do more of that. And I think the lives that she can impact and the education that she can give people will be incredible. But I absolutely don't think that the transition itself was for publicity. I think doing it publicly is one thing because, they live their lives in the public and they're kind of overshares sometimes. But I think that she absolutely did it for herself. And then people don't understand what we go through, but to go through that, I went through it for 24 years. I hid for 24 years. I can imagine 65 years. And I heard her talk about being suicidal, and I think to myself, like, I was there. I've been to the point where I felt like no one understood me. If I just ended it all right now, I'd just be all good. Like I could just kill myself right now. And I'm glad I didn't get to that point.
Right.
But I understand it. Yeah. I absolutely understand it. But you don't go through what we go through just for the sake of publicity. You don't go through it's absurd for people to think that, and I think they're just going by what her family does and the way that they live and the fact that they're on TV and because it's getting so much attention. The thing is once you have the attention of people and once you have a voice, the question is now, what do you really have to say? What are you going to do with it?
Why is it in general, do you think that, society is so bothered by the whole Kardashian clan? Because this is kind of, it's still an offshoot of that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Why is everybody so bothered by it? Because they say things like, what is their talent or what are they famous for? Right. And I always think to myself, if you're asking that question, then you just answered your question in that same question. You answered it by asking it because we're still talking about them. And, there have been plenty of people who have had sex tapes. Right. And there have been plenty of people who, had things happen to them that were promiscuous, but they actually they didn't do anything with that. They didn't use it to create something huge. And that's what they did. And just like Kim said, she knows that she was introduced to the world through a sex tape. She's not crazy. She knows that. But she feels like she had to work twice as hard. And she works hard. People don't understand that. As a businesswoman, she works really hard to stay on top. And now they've built an empire of branding and endorsement deals and books and clothing lines and their television shows and all the spinoffs and all those different things, perfumes, everything. So I think people are hard on them because I think they feel like they haven't really worked for it.
Gotcha.
And I disagree with that. I feel like they absolutely have worked for it.
And we're going to come back with more of that. But right now, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more Riley Knoxx.
Big dreams and good grades aren't enough to get into college. There are actual steps you need to take. Finding someone who can help is the first and most important. For the next steps, go to knowhowtogo.org.
Oh, those boys are much too much. Those boys are much too much. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We're going to beat them and bust them. Beat them.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life.
Let's get a little bit rowdy. R-O-W-D-Y.
Take time to be a
One
dad
more time.
today.
Oh, those boys are much too much. Those boys.
And we're back with another episode of Richie on the Rocks. And today we have with us the beautiful Riley Knoxx.
You're rhyming even when you're not trying.
That's just what I do.
Yeah.
So before we talked about transitioning, we talked a little bit about Caitlyn Jenner. I want to talk about a little bit about the Black community. Do you think that it's hard for the Black community to be more accepting of the transgender community? And why do you think that is?
Well, I think when men are younger, they are taught to be really, especially in the Black community, really strong Black men, really macho, and anything that's less than that is a lot of times very frowned upon, whether you're gay or whether you're transitioning. Anything less than really tough and macho is sometimes thought of as being weak. And they don't, no one who's Black wants to come off as being weak. That's just the thing. So I think that's got a lot to do with it.
What do you think we can do to change that? Like, how do we begin to do that? Because I feel like, we've had Laverne Cox on the cover of Time magazine. You know what I'm saying? We've had, and I feel like, that got a little bit of, traction.
Yes.
I think it was major, definitely major.
Yes.
But I just don't think that it was the windfall that was with Caitlyn.
Yeah.
So why?
The
why
thing
is,
and that's what I've been talking about a lot lately. She's not the first, Caitlyn.
Right.
She's not the first. She may not even be the best. It's just right now she's the biggest, and with that comes a lot of I want to say responsibility. It's just what comes with the territory. The thing with Laverne is she's on a show and she was playing a transgender person on the show, and this is someone that we pretty much was introduced to the world already transgender. A lot of people are, but with Bruce, we knew who Bruce was. We watched Bruce and his kids and on that show, and we sometimes felt sorry for Bruce because he was surrounded by all these really strong women and all this stuff, and we feel like we know who that is. And then Bruce is now Caitlyn. And so it's kind of a thing where it's now the biggest. She's not the first person. I mean, we've been around for so long, and there are so many girls that have been through so much and that were pioneers and that were activists and people who were persecuted, and didn't get the recognition that Caitlyn is getting. And I think that has been a big thing lately. I've heard a lot of people talk about that too, that it's like she just came in and took all the glory. And she really, I think that's only if you allow her to, if you allow that to be the mentality. I think it's just wonderful that someone has to be the first, or someone has to be the one person that takes it, that pushes it out into the forefront. They're not always the first person to ever do something, but they are the biggest. And as the biggest, here comes that responsibility.
So I asked the question because I feel like it's been floating around, but I think secretly I'm kind of like, well, why does it matter? Why are we separating two races. When there's the
Yeah.
bigger issue is the support for the community.
Right.
You know,
I don't know why that happens. That happens a lot, but I don't know why. I haven't even, it never even occurred to me until you just asked me that. It didn't even occur to me, like the whole black white thing,
Yeah.
you know.
I
And
mean, because I saw a lot about it on Facebook, and I
Yeah.
mean, people have had a lot to say, and it's like sometimes I want to
Yeah.
block people on Facebook because of their
especially since
opinions.
Caitlyn
but-
comes from privilege.
Exactly,
also.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, but
And there are a lot of girls who don't have the money to get all the surgeries and look that way,
Right.
and don't have the money to transition or live in areas that it's not as accepted, where they can walk down the street and have things thrown at them and have all kinds of things, being persecuted in different
Yeah.
ways. But I think that seeing Caitlyn go through this, or seeing Caitlyn, that it will start to a little more acceptance, and then maybe it'll trickle down into those communities.
right. Okay.
Hopefully,
Yeah. I mean,
because it's no
been
longer
interesting.
a taboo thing. It's no longer a thing that people have to whisper about anymore. It's on the cover of magazines, and we're out there. And that's what we want. We want to be treated like everybody else, but we don't want to be people's dirty little secrets, and we don't want to.
So what about the notion that some people would say that she's not a real woman? It's not something that I agree with, but it's something that's been said.
Yeah.
How do you respond to that?
The way I always have. Gender is between your ears, sex is between your legs. Yeah.
You're so,
So-
wise to be so young.
No, but I'm not that young, first of all. But it is, legally she's a woman. I think, had she not shared the fact that she has not had the complete surgery yet, I think people wouldn't say things like that.
Gotcha.
And it's none of their business. But she has said in the future she does plan on having it, and even Chloe said to her, if you're gonna do it, you better do it all the way. Don't half do it. But yeah, there have been some pretty well-known people that have also tweeted some mean things. Like someone tweeted, I forgot who it was, said that, I'm still gonna call you Bruce, And to me, I don't care about, I can't say I don't care, but it means more to me that I am respected than I am accepted. Because I don't, if you respect me, you're going to treat me a certain way, but if I don't really care that you agree with what I did. Like for instance, my grandmother will never accept what I did. She'll never agree with it, but she is respectful to me. I've cut lots of family members off in my family just because they refused to call me Riley. They refused to call me by the name that I wanted to be called now. Now, funny thing is, Riley is a gender neutral name. However, they, because I changed my name, and they felt like them calling me that was them accepting it, and I completely cut them off because
So you
it's
had
just
to
sort
go
of
through
like,
the entire process of changing your name.
yeah,
Was that difficult?
no, you could do it.
Really?
Yes, you could go down to the courthouse and do it right now.
I've always thought about that. So, I have. I mean, it's just I grew up with the name.
You
that I
pay the
really
money,
didn't
you
like.
do it.
Really?
Yeah, but there's different laws. Like in DC, the law is a little bit different. You have to you have to pay the money, and then you have to have your name printed in a publication, and they give you 3 different ones to choose from. And I think they do it just in case you're running from bill collectors or something, or at least that was the way the law was when I
mean,
did
that's
it.
a pretty nice idea. But so, question: what do you think about people who say that? Well, I guess what do you think about the notion that Caitlyn does not, I guess, want to date guys?
Yeah. So many people
As
focus.
she's going to be a woman. Like,
Yeah.
is that relevant? Does it matter? But what are your thoughts about it?
So many people focus on the sex. So many people focus on the sexual nature of it. They think that, how could you not be attracted to men?
Right.
You transition to a woman I'm not attracted to, I don't want to date a woman. But there are lots of girls who are transgendered that do. And there are some that have stayed married. And even Caitlyn said that if Chris had been okay with it, she would have stayed married to Chris. She loved Chris. It's not about that. And she said, if I had to make a list of 10 reasons that this is that I wanted to do this, that I wanted to transition. 1 being the most important. 10 would be for a sexual reason. She said, I'm not sure how I'm going to feel once I transition, once I'm in my new body, whether I want to date, how I'm going to feel, but I'm attracted to women. And for right now, I'm not even thinking about dating anybody. That's what she said. And I was thinking about this last night. Like, I could have never done this for the sake of just dating purposes. I didn't become a girl just so I could date easier, or I could date, the kind of men that I wanted to date. That was never occurred to me, ever. It was never even on my radar. I was just trying to live my truth.
Right.
And it's a struggle within yourself. People don't get it. People don't understand what it's like to feel like you were born in the wrong body, and to feel that your entire life. And it's a foreign concept to people because they've not felt it, but it's a real thing.
So bringing it back to you real quick before we wrap up, what's next for you personally?
A lot.
I know you have a lot going on.
I do. I want to do a lot more in the community as an activist, but personally, I have music coming out. I have a whole album. I have a lot more performing in new places, I should say. Right. Performing in new places.
Right.
And just really trying to push the message as an activist also. I feel like I have the first few years of my career. I've been doing this for 15 years. And I feel like the first 10 years were devoted to me just being pretty and just being on stage and just being, trying to do all this stuff and trying to top myself and whatever, and trying to get people's attention and prove myself as an artist. But I feel like the last 5 years have been dedicated to giving back and to trying to educate people and trying to create awareness for trans people and trying to help the community. And I want to do more of that. I want to do a lot more of that.
All right. Well, we will definitely be watching. Thank you so much for stopping by the show.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. No problem. And this concludes another episode of Richie on the Rocks. Thanks for watching.